We have walked in disobedience. That's why we are so adamant, if you will, about preaching on you want to choose immediate obedience, because we have been there. We've walked down those roads of disobedience, and life looks great. It looks fantastic. You're following what the majority did. The majority is living well. The majority is living the high life, and you want to follow that and you want to be there. The majority of my family is in Pennsylvania. Me and my uncle. My uncle lives in North Carolina, and then I have left. We're the only two out of my entire family that has left Pennsylvania. But the majority isn't always right. Pennsylvania is not the life, at least in this season, that God has planted us in. We might call it to go back home because that's where our family is. But to be honest, Buffalo, Wyoming is our home. God has called us here. And whereas the majority is there, we need to choose faith and walk in it. And we love being here. That has nothing to do with anything other than majority is not always right. But every now and again, the enemy likes to get in there. And he likes to say, but do you see what you're missing? Do you see what you could have if you just followed everybody else? Do you see what you could do, especially in this world of influencers and all of this sort of stuff out there on social media? Do you know if you just follow what they're doing, but they're not following God? They're not following the plan that he has placed on your life. They're not choosing the path of faith and obedience and trust, even when it looks hard. And the good news of Numbers 14 is this: what looked like disaster was actually destiny. And that's where the title of my message this morning comes from: Destiny in Disguise. Because when the Israelites got there, it looked like disaster, but it was actually destiny. And what looked like a setback was actually a set up. Fear was actually the doorway to God's promise. The question is never whether God is faithful, but the question rather is, are we going to trust him when the majority says we shouldn't? And today we're going to look at what Israel got wrong and what Joshua and Caleb got right, so that when life gets overwhelming, when the enemy gets in there and says, oh, but maybe you should, look and see what they have, look and see what's over there, we can stay aligned with God's promises. So Numbers 14, we're going to read the whole chapter. We're going to start in verse 1. It says this. It says, then the whole community began weeping aloud, and they cried all night. Their voices rose in a great chorus of protest against Moses and Aaron. If only we had died in Egypt or even here in the wilderness, they complained. Why is the Lord taking us to this country only to have us die in battle? Our wives and our little ones will be carried off as plunder. Wouldn't it be better for us to return to Egypt? And then they plotted among themselves. Let's choose a new leader and go back to Egypt. Here we go again. Same story, different scenery. The Israelites are falling back into their old habits. When things are going the way that they did not expect them to go, they thought they were going to live the high life when God took them out of Egypt. They were going to the promised land, and they knew that's where they were going, and they were so excited to get there. But guess what? The journey didn't look how they wanted it to look. And that's life, right? The journey doesn't ever look the way we thought it would look, the way we might want it to look. So they're starting to fall back into their old habits of complaining and grumbling and wondering what life would be like if they had just stayed, or if God had let them die in Egypt or in the wilderness. And pick back up in verse 5. It says, then Moses and Aaron fell face down on the ground before the whole community of Israel. Two of the men who had explored the land, Joshua son of Nun and Caleb son of Jephunneh, tore their clothing. Then they said to all the people of Israel, the land we traveled through and explored is a wonderful land, And if the Lord is pleased with us, he will bring us safely into that land and give it to us. It is a rich land flowing with milk and honey. You see, Moses and Aaron and Joshua and Caleb, they knew what God had promised. It didn't matter what it looked like on the outside. They knew, so they were grieving. It says they fell down on their face before the community, Moses and Aaron did, and Joshua and Caleb tore their clothing. Those symbols of falling down on your face and tearing your clothing, those were signs of grief. Because they knew the Israelites were beginning to fall back into their old habits. And if they were falling back into their old habits and they were only looking on surface level as to what was going on, they were going to miss what God had for them. See, they only see the physical. They saw the giants. They saw defeat. But Joshua and Caleb saw destiny. They saw a God who had already promised victory, and what looked like disaster was actually destiny in disguise. Verse 9 says, "Do not rebel against the Lord, and don't be afraid of the people of the land. They are only helpless prey to us. They have no protection, but the Lord is with us. Don't be afraid of them." You see, Joshua was trying to call the Israelites back to the truth that God was the one who was in control. He knew what the area looked like. He knew what the promised land looked like before the Israelites even heard of the promised land. He knew that there were going to be giants there. He knew that everything was going to look scary on the outside, but he also knew what he had called his people to. And he also knew he was not going to leave them, and because he was with them, they were going to have the victory. In verse 10 it says, "But the whole community began to talk about stoning Joshua and Caleb. Then the glorious presence of the Lord appeared to all the Israelites at the tabernacle. And the Lord said to Moses, 'How long will these people treat me with contempt? Will they never believe me, even after all the miraculous signs I have done among them?'" You see, these people, they're the ones who saw the plagues. They're the ones who saw God's hand. They were the ones who were passed over by the angel of death. They were the ones who received the manna in the wilderness. They were the ones who were led by the pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night. They had seen the miraculous hand of God firsthand. This is not something that had to be discussed and passed down in the testimony that we've been talking about over the last month. It wasn't something that had to be passed down to generation to generation to generation. These were the people who first-handedly saw everything that God had done. And then they come to the promised land, and the 12 spies come back, and 10 of them begin to talk and grumble and complain about the giants and how scary it is and how it's going to be work and what if we're defeated. But they had seen God's hand at work, and they still began to doubt. Verse 12, "I will disown them and destroy them with a plague. Then I will make you into a greater nation and mightier than they are." But Moses objected. It's so important that we have people, and we are people, who will object, who will stand in the gap and say, "Lord, you have spoken this. Lord, you have promised this. Lord, you have said this," not to remind him of who he is, because he knows who he is. But sometimes we've got to get our hearts and our minds back into alignment because we fall into the wayside. And Moses objected, and he said, "What will the Egyptians think when they hear about it?" And he asked the Lord, "They know full well the power you displayed in rescuing your people from Egypt. Now if you destroy them, the Egyptians will send a report to the inhabitants of this land, who have already heard that you live among your people. They know, Lord, that you have appeared to your people face to face, and that your pillar of cloud hovers over them. They know that you go before them in the pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night. Now if you slaughter all of these people with a single blow, the nations that have heard of your fame will say, 'The Lord was not able to bring them into the land he swore to give them, so he killed them in the wilderness.' Please, Lord, prove that your power is as great as you have claimed, for you have said." Please, Lord, prove that your power is as great as you have claimed, for you have said. Again, It's not because Moses needed to remind God of what he said. God already knows what he has said. God has already known what he has spoken. God has already known. It's more of a, I'm getting myself back into alignment. I'm reminding you of what you said to me because I need to now stand in that promise. I need to now take that spiritual heading and guide my people, guide my family, guide my workplace, guide my circle, guide my whatever it is into your faith and into your promises. I am not going to waver. I am going to listen to what you have said. You have promised me. You have called me here to this place. Therefore, you are going to provide. You are going to show us our power. You are going to prove how great you have said you are going to be, and you are going to get the glory. Numbers 14, 18. Verse 18 says, the Lord is slow to anger and filled with unfailing love, forgiving every kind of sin and rebellion. But he does not excuse the guilty. He lays the sins of the parents upon their children, and the entire family is affected, even children in the third and fourth generations. In keeping with your magnificent, unfailing love, please pardon the sins of this people, just as you have forgiven them ever since they left Egypt. Then the Lord said, I will pardon them as you have requested. But as surely as I live, and as surely as the earth is filled with the Lord's glory, not one of these people will ever enter that land. They have all seen my glorious presence and the miraculous signs I performed in Egypt and in the wilderness, but again and again they have tested me by refusing to listen to my voice. They will never even see the land I swore to give their ancestors. None of those who have treated me with contempt will ever see it. But my servant Caleb has a different attitude than the others have. He has remained loyal to me, so I will bring him into the land he explored. His descendants will possess their full share of that land. Now turn around and go on toward the land where the Amalekites and Canaanites live. Tomorrow you must set out for the wilderness in the direction of the Red Sea. Then the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, how long must I put up with this wicked community and its complaints about me? Yes, I've heard the complaints from Israel. Now tell them this. As surely as I live, declares the Lord, I will do to you the very things I have heard you say. You will drop dead in the wilderness because you complained against me. Every one of you who is 20 years old or older was included in the registration will die. You will not enter and occupy the land I swore to give to you. The only exceptions will be Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and Joshua, the son of Nun. You said your children will be carried off as plunder. Well, I will bring them safely into the land, and they will enjoy what you have despised. But as for you, you will drop dead in the wilderness. And your children will be like shepherds, wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. In this way they will pay for your faithlessness, until the last of you lies dead in the wilderness. Because your men explored the land for 40 days, you must wander in the wilderness for 40 years, a year for each day, suffering the consequences of your sins. Then you will discover what it's like to have me for an enemy. I, the Lord, have spoken. I will certainly do these things to every member of the community who has conspired against me. They will be destroyed here in the wilderness, and here they will die. Then the 10 men Moses had sent to explore the land, the ones who incited rebellion against the Lord with their bad report, were struck dead with a plague before the Lord. Of the 12 who had explored the land, only Joshua and Caleb remained alive. When Moses reported the words of the Lord to the Israelites, the people were filled with grief. Then they got up early the next morning and went to the top of the range of hills. Let's go, they said. We realize that we have sinned, and now we are ready to enter the land the Lord has promised us. But Moses said, why are you now disobeying the Lord's orders to return to the wilderness? It won't work. Do not go up into the land now. You will only be crushed by your enemies because the Lord is not with you. When you face the Amalekites and the Canaanites in battle, you will be slaughtered. The Lord will abandon you because you have abandoned the Lord. But the people defiantly pushed ahead toward the hill country, and even though neither Moses nor the ark of the Lord's covenant left the camp, then the Amalekites and Canaanites who lived in those hills came down and attacked them and chased them as far back as Hormah. You see, without the Lord on our side, we can achieve nothing. We can achieve nothing. There are moments in our lives where the Lord has to take his hands and go, okay, you think you know better than I do? Have at it. Again, these are people who had seen firsthand the miraculous workings of God. They've eaten the manna. They walked across the bed of the Red Sea on dry, like they walked across with the water, and they weren't affected by the angel of death. And they still complained when things didn't look the way they wanted it to look. When life got a little bit rough. The Israelites made 3 key mistakes. They followed the crowd instead of God. 12 spies were sent in. They spent 40 days. 10 of those 12 came back and incited rebellion. They allowed fear to take hold. You see, fear-driven opinions can tend to override God's proven character. The majority was filled with fear, not faith. And instead of remembering what God had already done, they let the loudest voices determine their direction. Mistake number 2 was that they feared the giants instead of trusting God's plan. They began to focus on the giants instead of the God who defeats giants. They exaggerated the danger. We seemed like grasshoppers, is what they said. And they minimized God's power, because fear caused them to see the obstacles as bigger than the God who promised them the land. And their third mistake was that they fell back into rebellion and bad habits. They rejected God's direction when it wasn't comfortable or predictable. They grumbled, they complained, they talked about choosing a new leader, and even said they wished they had died in Egypt. You see, they preferred the familiarity of slavery over the uncertainty of faith. The Israelites were only looking as far as they could physically see. The giants, defeat, disaster. When Joshua and Caleb saw destiny, they saw a God who promised the victory. And as I was going through this yesterday, all I could keep hearing was, look beyond what you see. Look beyond what you see. And it's a scene from The Lion King. Rafiki takes Simba to see his father's reflection in water. And Simba's so focused on what he sees, which are his past mistakes, his fear, the weight of what's happened, that he cannot see his true identity or the destiny that awaits him. And Rafiki simply just keeps saying, look beyond what you see. And the moment that Simba changes his perspective, he begins to step into the destiny that he was created for. And it's exactly the same thing of what Joshua and Caleb were doing. They looked past the giants. They looked past the fear. They looked past the impossibility, and they saw God's promise. And that's the same call for us today. Life is going to be putting all sorts of obstacles in front of us. And the crowd is going to begin to panic, and fear will begin to whisper in our ears. But God is saying, look beyond what you see. Trust me. Step into the destiny that I have for you. And that brings us to the heart of my message today, which is how not to follow the Israelites' footsteps. How to respond when the majority isn't right and when the obstacles look bigger than God, when disaster seems to be right in front of you. And there are 3 ways that we can do this. And our first way is that we are going to remember God's promises. Joshua 1:9 says, this is my command. Be strong and courageous. You know how it doesn't say be brave? It doesn't say be brave. And that to me says I can be shaking in my boots and I can still be strong and courageous. Has nothing to do with bravery. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. He is an omnipresent God, which is just a really, really fancy word for saying he is ever present. He is everywhere. There is not a place that you can go that he is not already there. He is with us in the daylight. He is with us in the darkest night. He is with us in the pit, on the sea, in the lion's den, in the furnace. He is with us every single place we go. Deuteronomy 1:29-31 says, "But I said to you, don't be shocked or afraid of them. The Lord your God is going ahead of you, and he will fight for you, just as you saw him do in Egypt. And you saw how the Lord your God cared for you all along the way as you traveled through the wilderness, just as a father cares for his child. Now he has brought you to this place." He has gone ahead of you. The victory, you are not fighting for victory. You are fighting from victory. He's already taken care of it. It's already done. Like I said during worship, he's not frantically pacing back and forth, back and forth. He's not wringing his hands trying to figure out, okay, what are they going to do next? What are they going to do next? Where do I have to go? He's not a reactive God. He has gone before us. He knows what tomorrow's going to do. He knows what mistakes we're going to make along the way. He knows the fears and the doubts that are going to creep in. And he has taken care of us. Doesn't matter what our wilderness looks like. My wilderness is going to look very different from each and every single one of your wildernesses. My pit is going to look different. My stormy sea is going to look very, very different. But he is still with us. He has still gone before us. He is still caring for us as a father cares for his child. And he has still brought us to the place where we are at right now. Psalm 77:11 says, "But then I recall all that you have done, O Lord, and I remember your wonderful deeds of long ago." Hebrews 11:1 says, "Faith shows us the reality of what we hope for. It is the evidence of things we cannot see." If I have enough faith that I'm going to sit down in that chair and it's not going to break underneath me, why can I not have faith that the God who has proved to me again and again and again and again and again and again and again how good and faithful and true he is, that he is not going to provide in this moment in time? We need to remember God's promises. Faith grows and strengthens when we choose to remember all that God has already said and done, rather than looking at the obstacles and the giants that are standing right in front of us. When we remember, we're not reminding God of who he is or what he has said or done, but we are reminding ourselves, and we are putting a stop to worshiping the problem or the obstacle or the giant, and we begin worshiping the problem solver. Numbers 23:19 says, "God is not a man, so he does not lie. He is not human, so he does not change his mind. Has he ever spoken and failed to act? Has he ever promised and not carried it through?" We need to remember his promises. We need to remember everything that he has done up until this point. Hebrews 6:18-19. "So God has given both his promise and his oath. These two things are unchangeable because it is impossible for God to lie. Therefore, we who have fled to him for refuge can have great confidence as we hold to the hope that lies before us." And verse 19 says this hope is strong and trustworthy anchor for our souls. It leads us through the curtain into God's inner sanctuary. When we begin to have those anxious thoughts arise, we need to immediately respond with Scripture. It's why the word says, Psalm 119:11 says, "I've stored up your word in my heart that I might not sin against you." Other translation says, "I have hidden your word in my heart that I might not sin against you." When we begin to hide or store up his word, when we begin to memorize verses, and who cares if you can remember where they're found or not? I can tell you a bunch of verses paraphrased. I can't tell you where they're found. I can give you a good estimate, but I can't tell you where they're found. I'm not good in that aspect. But that doesn't mean his word is not stored up in my heart. That doesn't mean that when those situations come, I can't start praying trigger prayers and start praying the scriptures. No, God, you have said this. No, God, you have said that. You have said that you do not lie. And if you do not lie, then you are Jehovah Jireh. You are going to provide for me. You are Jehovah Rapha. You are going to heal my husband. You are going to heal my daughter. You are going to heal XYZ. You are the God of restoration. So you are going to restore all of these relationships. You're going to restore all that has been taken. Your word says. Psalm 46:1 says, God is our refuge and our strength, a very present help in trouble. A very present help. How does he help? He reminds us who he is and what he has done. When we begin to pull out all of these promises and when we begin to speak all of his names, Lord, you are Jehovah Jireh, my provider. You are Jehovah Rapha, my healer. You are Jehovah Sidkenu, my righteousness. You are Elohim, the creator God. And if you are the creator God, you have created everything, then everything is under your authority. You are Jehovah Sabaoth, the Lord of heaven's armies. You are Jehovah Suri, the rock on which I stand. You are El Roy, the God who sees me. You are the miracle worker, the way maker, the promise keeper. David stood before Goliath, and he didn't begin to question God or cry out about how big the giant was in front of him. Instead, he began to proclaim how big his God is. And when the giants stand before us, when the weapons are formed, we need to begin to get our heads and our hearts into alignment with who God is. He is my protector. He is my peace. He is my shepherd. He is my rock. He does not give me the spirit of fear like 2 Timothy 1:7 says. Because fear only magnifies our obstacles. But faith sees the opportunity. Which brings me to my second point. Our first is that we need to remember. And my second is that we need to see. Romans 8:31 says, what shall we say about such wonderful things as these? If God is for us, who can ever be against us? Matthew 14:28-31. Then Peter called to him, Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you walking on the water. Yes, come, Jesus said. So Peter went over the side of the boat and he walked on the water towards Jesus. But when he saw the strong wind and the waves, he was terrified and he began to sink. Save me, Lord, he shouted. And Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him. You have so little faith, Jesus said. Why did you doubt me? Isaiah 41:10, do not be afraid, for I am with you. Do not be discouraged, for I am your God. I will strengthen you, and I will help you, and I will hold you up with my victorious right hand. Psalm 56:3, but when I am afraid, I will put my trust in you. When I'm afraid. Takes us back to 2 Timothy 1:7. God does not give us a spirit of fear. So how do we break this horrible cycle of when things go wrong and when things begin to pile up and the giants are here and the pit and all the things are piling up against us, the obstacles, when life doesn't look the way and all of a sudden we begin to become afraid and that spirit of fear begins to come upon us. What do? We put our trust back in God. Our immediate response to that chest-tightening fear feeling should be to trust. To trust in a God who has proved himself over and over and over again. Instead of allowing that feeling to completely inundate us and make us drift off course, we need to fix our eyes on Jesus. Like a ship coming in a bad storm. The captain fixes his eyes on the light from the lighthouse, while the other sailors might begin to panic. You see, the one panicking, his eyes are focused on the waves and the storm around them. But the captain slowly and steadily steering the ship to safety. His eyes are fixed on the guiding light. We need to take captive our thoughts. We need to act in a way that may seem completely foreign to most. And that's why the majority isn't always right. Because everybody else is going to say, why are you not afraid? Why are you not panicking right here and right now? Why are you sitting there and so calmly? What is going on? A lot of people are panicking right now. Inflation is going up and up and up. I was talking to my sister the other night. I talk to her daily, but I was talking to her just the other night. And she's like, I don't know what we're going to do. She has 3 kids, 4 and under. And if she was to go back to work, she'd literally just be paying for daycare. It's not even worth it. She said, I don't know what to do. I said, I'm going to tell you what you're going to do. You're going to start praying. Because he is Jehovah Jireh. And she's recently found a church that she started to attend with her husband, and she's loving it. I said, you're learning and you're growing closer and you're getting deeper. The storms are going to come, and they're going to come, and they're going to come, and they're going to come. But don't you dare let fear take over you. God will take care of you. He will protect you. As long as you're putting your trust and all of your energy into him and not into the fear and the anxiety and everything else that happens around you. God's got you. We need our knee-jerk reaction to be remembering who God is and what he has done and what he says he's going to do. And our knee-jerk reaction needs to be that we see him. We don't see the fear. We don't see the situation. We don't see the wind and the waves coming around us. But we see his guiding light, and we fix our eyes upon him. And that brings me to my third point. We need to remember, we need to see, and we need to act. James 2:17 says, so you see, faith by itself is not enough. Unless it produces good deeds, it is dead and useless. Romans 10:9 and 10 says, if you openly declare that Jesus is the Lord and believe in your heart and that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For it is by believing in your heart that you are made right with God, and it is by openly declaring your faith that you are saved. How do we declare our faith? We act in it. We don't let fear take us over. We don't follow the majority as they're going this way, but God is calling us to go this way. We need to act in our faith. Proverbs 18:21 says, the tongue can bring life or death. Those who love to talk will reap the consequences. That's exactly what the Israelites did. When life was not going the way they wanted it to go, when the 10 spies came back and said, oh, we're like grasshoppers against these big giants, and there's this and there's that, and it's awful, and we're going to die, they began to speak death. They began to say, we should have just died. We should have just stayed. God, you don't know what you're talking about. You promised us this, but you're not. They began to speak death over their situations, and guess what? They reaped the consequences of speaking death over their situation. Sometimes our actions look simply like words in movement. They're when we begin to speak life over our situations and we walk in the life-speaking actions. I'm not just going to sit here and say, oh, this is failing, this. No, I'm going to proclaim that Jesus already has this taken care of, that he has already got this, he's already in tomorrow, he already knows what's going on, and I'm going to walk in that faith, and I'm going to choose the life-speaking actions, and I'm not going to allow doubt and fear to creep in. Again, that knee-jerk reaction is going to be to trust in him because he has proven himself time and time and time and time again, and he is not going to walk away from me right now. Hebrews 11:30 says, it was by faith that the people of Israel marched around Jericho for 7 days, and the walls came crashing down. If they did not walk, if they did not physically walk around those walls, the walls would have never came crashing down. There are walls that we need to walk around. There are giants that we need to walk around when God tells us to do so. And if we don't do it, the walls are not going to come crashing down. David had to pick up the 5 stones, and he had a sling to take down Goliath. He didn't just stand there and talk to him to death. There was a physical action that needed to happen, just like the Israelites had to physically walk around Jericho. You see, obedience sometimes seems really strange. But when we act in obedience out of a knee-jerk, faith-filled reaction, we are brought into God's miraculous outcomes. There's a book called Immediate Obedience. Highly recommend everybody to read it. 99.9% sure Rod Loy is the one who writes it. Josh would be able to tell you better. But there's something amazing that happens when you make this obedient or immediate obedience your knee-jerk reaction. You get to take a walk of faith that will grow you so immensely. And you will see God's miraculous outcomes in so many ways that you could only wish you had seen. So many ways. But obedience needs to be our knee-jerk, faith-filled reaction when the world is crumbling around us, when it feels like we can't breathe, when it feels like nothing is ever going to go right. Obedience still needs to be our immediate reaction. And as we close today, I just want to ask you some simple questions. Where have you been listening to the majority? Where have you let fear speak louder than faith? Where have you been like the Israelites, following the crowd, focusing on the giants, falling back into old habits, when God is calling you to remember, to see that He's still working, and to act in obedience? Some of you are facing something right now that looks like disaster, but today God is reminding you that it might actually be destiny in disguise. Some of you have forgotten what God has said. You've forgotten His promises. You've forgotten His faithfulness. And today, God is calling you back into that place of remembering. Some of you need your vision healed. You've been seeing the waves instead of the Savior, the giants instead of the God who defeats giants. And Jesus is saying it to you today, fix your eyes on me. And for some of you, maybe it's time to act, time to take the step, time to obey even what seems strange, time to declare the truth instead of agreeing with fear. And if that's you, if you're saying, God, help me be like Joshua and Caleb, help me trust your voice over the voice of the crowd, I just want you to know that these altars are open. They're always open. And this could be your moment to choose faith over fear, obedience over comfort, God's promise over the majority's panic, destiny over disaster. Let's pray. Lord, we just love you.